The story begins with Hallam, a young man sitting in a treehouse. Calmly, he observes his surroundings using binoculars. His focus is on a couple enjoying their time together in the forest. After watching them for a while, Hallam writes something in his notebook. After that, Hallam takes off his shirt, puts on a wolf-shaped headpiece, and then descends from the treehouse using a rope like Tarzan, yelling loudly. His scream startles the couple. The man looks angry, scolding Hallam for disturbing them and saying that what Hallam did was not a joke, before the two of them eventually walk away. Hallam returns to his treehouse. This time, he prepares to leave while gazing at a picture of a woman on the wall. After that, he climbs down and walks toward a nearby house. Inside the house, there are two women. Hallam, in a longing tone, expresses his feelings to the younger woman. However, she just laughs and takes his words as a joke. The scene shifts to a restaurant, where Lucy is celebrating Julius and Verity's birthday. The dinner feels warm, with Lucy offering her congratulations and Verity explaining why she chose this restaurant for the occasion. Verity also shares stories from her past with Julius. After dinner, Lucy drives Hallam back to his treehouse. On the way, Lucy suggests that Hallam should visit the pub more often. However, Hallam casually refuses, saying he'll go another time. His response makes Lucy look annoyed and she drives away without another word. That night, Hallam peeks through a window, watching Verity and Julius playing the piano together affectionately. He silently observes their romantic moment before returning to his treehouse. There, he gazes at a photo of his mother and says goodnight, as if speaking to her. The next morning, Lucy gets ready to leave. She calls out Hallam's name while loading her belongings into a taxi, but Hallam doesn't appear. Instead, he is on the roof, secretly watching Lucy. As her taxi starts moving, Hallam suddenly emerges from his hiding spot and runs after it, calling Lucy's name. Unfortunately, she doesn't notice and drives away. With a heavy heart, Hallam returns to his treehouse. There, he opens a box, lost in thought. Not long after, Verity calls out to him using a megaphone, inviting him to lunch. During lunch, Julius and Verity discuss plans for Hallam to continue his studies so he can get a job. However, Hallam flatly refuses the idea and leaves the table without saying much. Back at home, Hallam overhears Julius and Verity talking in the living room. Their conversation is about Hallam's dislike toward Verity. Julius tries to calm the situation, telling Verity to be patient and promising to talk to Hallam about it. Sometime later, Hallam asks Julius to talk. As they walk, Hallam asks about Verity's whereabouts and then shares that he found his mother's old boat at the lock. Suspicion begins to grow in his mind, and he asks Julius what really happened to his mother. Julius explains that she had taken too many sleeping pills before the tragic incident, then apologizes. However, Hallam isn't satisfied and asks again if it was truly an accident. Julius firmly states that it was nothing but an accident. That night, while Hallam is searching for something in the house, he hears laughter near his treehouse. When he returns, he finds that it has been vandalized with spray paint. Even the photo of his mother, which he had hung there, has not been spared. Anger and disappointment immediately boil inside him. The next morning, Hallam takes a box from his treehouse and brings it to his room. Shortly after, his phone rings. It's Lucy calling. Hallam steps out of the room to answer the call, leaving the door open. Meanwhile, seeing Hallam leave his room, Verity takes the opportunity. She enters Hallam's room, opens the box he left behind, and finds his diary inside. Curious, she copies a few pages from it. After finishing his conversation with Lucy, Hallam goes to the lakeside to check on the old boat Verity found. As he flips it over, he notices a large hole, which frustrates him even more. Feeling a mix of emotions, he returns to his treehouse. Not long after, Verity comes to the treehouse and casually reads aloud from Hallam's diary, which she had copied. This enrages Hallam. He feels that his privacy has been completely violated. Verity, however, responds with a threat, saying she'll report Hallam to the police. Hallam doesn't back down. He threatens her in return, holding up the hammer he used to nail the main beam of the boat. He suspects Verity is behind the vandalism of his treehouse and his mother's photo. Verity's response, mocking laughter, makes Hallam lose control. He lunges at her and grabs her by the throat. In desperation, Verity tries to stop him by touching him in an unexpected way. The touch makes Hallam freeze, shifting the atmosphere into something unforeseen, trapping them in a moment that should never have happened. After the incident, Hallam decides to leave everything behind and look for a job. On the train, his phone rings again, but he ignores it. Determined to make a fresh start, he even destroys his SIM card. Upon arriving in the city, Hallam wanders aimlessly. As night falls, he meets a man who offers him a job. However, Hallam senses something off about the man and chooses to walk away. Not far from there, two police officers approach him, suspecting him of being a dealer connected to the man earlier. When questioned, Hallam gives a fake name to avoid trouble. However, the police continue to pursue him. Feeling cornered, he runs as fast as he can, climbs a building, and manages to escape by reaching the rooftop. There, he finally catches his breath, though he knows he is now truly alone. The next day, from the rooftop of a building, Hallam accidentally spots a woman who looks strikingly similar to his mother. Curiosity immediately takes over, and without hesitation, he follows her to find out where she works. Using the excuse of looking for a job, Hallam gathers the courage to approach the woman and strike up a conversation. She introduces herself as Kate. In an attempt to get closer to her, Hallam asks Kate to help him practice for a job interview, claiming that this is his first time applying for a job. After the practice, Hallam is finally hired to work in a restaurant kitchen. There, an experienced man named Raymond guides him through various tasks. After work, Hallam doesn't go straight home. Instead, he secretly waits for Kate to leave and follows her without her noticing. When Kate arrives at a restaurant, Hallam watches as she meets a man who appears to be her boyfriend. His curiosity only grows stronger, and he continues to follow them until they finally part ways. After that, Hallam returns to his small, cluttered apartment filled with unused items. The next day, Hallam settles into his new routine in the restaurant kitchen. During a break in the cafeteria, he casually chats with Raymond, though most of his attention remains on Kate as she talks with some coworkers. After work, Hallam follows Kate again. This time he sees her training in boxing at a sports facility. Once her training session ends, Hallam decides to go to her flat. Quietly, he sneaks inside and starts going through her belongings. In one of the drawers, Hallam finds Kate's wedding photo. She is wearing a wedding dress standing next to a man. As he continues searching the flat, the sound of keys at the door sends him into a panic. Without thinking, he opens the window and escapes. Kate briefly notices the open window, but she doesn't seem too suspicious. The next day, Hallam works as usual in the kitchen. In between tasks, he jokes around with Raymond, lightening the mood. However, he accidentally breaks a plate. Raymond patiently explains that any broken dishes must be paid for. Instead of feeling guilty, Hallam intentionally breaks another plate while chuckling. After finishing part of his work, Hallam asks for a break. He then goes to a hidden spot inside a large clock tower that gives him a direct view of Kate's flat. He spends his time there, watching the building. When he returns to the restaurant, Hallam meets Alistair, a man who seems familiar with Kate. Alistair asks about his job, and Hallam replies that he works in the kitchen. Alistair gives him a subtle warning before letting him go back to work. In the kitchen, Hallam runs into Kate again. She asks about Raymond's whereabouts, and Hallam tells her that he's taking out the trash. Their conversation continues as Kate asks how he feels about his job in the kitchen. With a small smile, Hallam replies that he's enjoying it. That night, Hallam brings some belongings to his hiding spot inside the large clock tower. He plans to stay there and keep watching Kate's apartment. From his vantage point, he sees Kate receiving a visitor, and that visitor is none other than Alistair. Hallam watches as Alistair hugs Kate from behind, revealing their relationship. A mix of jealousy and anger slowly creeps into his mind. He climbs down from his hiding spot and heads toward Kate's apartment. However, his eyes remain fixed on the apartment, where he sees Alistair and Kate enjoying their time together. After everything is over, Hallam overhears their conversation about Alistair's wife. The conversation stirs up even more emotions: curiosity, anger, and confusion. The next day, Hallam decides to go to the police station. He reports that his mother's death, which was previously ruled as a suicide, was actually a murder. He even tells the officers about his stepmother's confession to the crime. After filing the report, Hallam returns to work as if nothing happened. Later, Hallam goes back to the large clock tower where he usually watches Kate, but this time Alistair follows him. When they reach the tower, Alistair sees Hallam watching Kate from a distance through binoculars. In a threatening tone, Alistair warns him that he will tell Kate about Hallam secretly spying on her from the tower. However, Hallam doesn't back down. He counters Alistair's threat with a secret of his own. He knows that Alistair, who is actually married, has been having fun with Kate. Furious, Alistair immediately kicks Hallam out and threatens to get him fired from his job. The next day, Hallam is seen at Alistair's house. He appears to be playing with Alistair's children and talking to his wife. In the middle of their conversation, Alistair's wife mentions that Hallam has revealed a certain secret to her. Hallam then explains that he only came to get Alistair's signature on a document. Once the document is signed, Hallam leaves. At work, Hallam receives a call from Kate. She offers him a porter position and he accepts. Hallam then moves to the porter's office. Dressed more neatly, he passes by Raymond, and they exchange greetings. That night, Alistair takes over Hallam's position. From inside the large clock tower, he spies on Hallam using binoculars. Alistair watches as Hallam stands on the rooftop of Kate's apartment, observing her while she dries her hair. Not long after, Alistair himself goes to see Kate and starts having fun with her. Hallam watches everything from a distance. At one point, Alistair even glances at Hallam with a mocking expression, making Hallam even more frustrated. After the incident, Hallam returns to the clock tower. He rereads a birthday letter from his mother when she was still alive. The longing grows stronger as he puts on an earring, a keepsake from her. The next day, Kate comes to see Hallam. She gives him a birthday card. Andy, one of his co-workers, explains that Kate often does this for the staff. They then plan to go out for drinks together to celebrate Hallam's birthday, now that he has reached the legal drinking age. After work, they head to a bar. They drink together, but Andy doesn't last long as he gets too drunk. Hallam and Kate end up continuing their little celebration alone. After a few drinks, Kate invites Hallam to her flat. At the flat, she starts dancing and seducing him. However, Hallam refuses, saying he can't do it. Despite this, they still end up sleeping together. As Kate sleeps beside him, Hallam sees his own shadow from a distance, standing on the rooftop, waving at him. It feels as if he is watching himself from another perspective. The next morning, Hallam meets Kate and asks her to go out for drinks or watch a movie together that night. Kate refuses, saying that what happened between them last night should have never happened. Hearing this, Hallam simply accepts it and walks away, understanding her decision. At work, Andy tells Hallam that a guest has requested him to come to their room. When Hallam arrives, he finds Kate there. She appears from behind, and they start talking about the previous night. Their conversation ends with them sleeping together once again in that room. A few days later, Hallam notices Kate talking to Alistair. Although it seems like a normal conversation, something about it makes him feel uneasy. Suspicion starts creeping in, and the jealousy he has been suppressing slowly rises to the surface. Without much thought, Hallam decides to follow Kate. While watching from a distance, he accidentally sees Alistair approaching her in a way that seems less than friendly. His curiosity mixed with concern drives him to climb onto the rooftop, searching for a clearer view. From above, Hallam sees a scene that makes his blood boil. Alistair is forcing himself on Kate. Her terrified screams leave Hallam with no choice. Without hesitation, he rushes into Kate's apartment, trying to stop Alistair. However, Hallam's sudden presence only confuses Kate. Seeing him unexpectedly in her apartment, she immediately questions his reason for being there. At that moment, Alistair, with a sly tone, reveals everything he knows about Hallam, including his habit of watching Kate from afar. His words enrage Kate, and she throws both of them out of her apartment. After the incident, Kate shuts down all possible ways for Hallam to watch her. Having lost his job following the event, Hallam now sits outside Kate's apartment building, hoping to talk to her. At first, Kate ignores him, but eventually, she lets him in and asks why he acted that way. Hallam finally opens up, sharing all his emotional wounds and memories even though it's difficult. Hearing his story, Kate feels sympathy for him. She offers him his job back and even invites him to stay with her for a while. Slowly, their relationship begins to heal. One night, Kate comes across Hallam's personal belongings, including a dress that belonged to his late mother. Without hesitation, she tries it on, hoping to comfort Hallam by bringing back fond memories of his mother. That moment strengthens their bond, as if there is a deep understanding between them. The next day, Hallam receives news from Andy that his parents are looking for him. He immediately goes to meet them, surprised to see his father arriving with Verity. Kate joins them briefly and introduces herself, but she is asked to leave so they can discuss family matters in private. His father explains that he needs Hallam's approval to proceed with a certain plan that Lucy, Hallam's younger sister, has decided upon according to their mother's will. However, Hallam outright refuses the plan, still suspecting that Verity is manipulating his father. Tensions rise as Verity follows Hallam, leading to a heated argument about his mother's death. Overcome with emotion, Hallam returns to his family home, filled with anger and disappointment. That night, he finds his father asleep in the living room while Verity is in her room. In a fit of rage, Hallam drags Verity out of the house, takes her to the edge of the lake, and forces her underwater. However, after a few minutes, guilt crashes over him. He immediately pulls Verity back to the surface, removes the tape covering her mouth, and unties her hands. Hallam tries to save Verity by giving her mouth-to-mouth resuscitation until she finally regains consciousness. At that moment, Julius appears at the lakeside and reveals the long-hidden truth. He explains that Hallam's mother's death was actually her own decision, and he carries the guilt of not stopping her. Hearing this confession, Hallam finally comes to terms with his past and begins to let go of his emotional burdens. A few days later, Hallam meets Kate to talk about their relationship. Although they deeply understand and care for each other, they decide to end things for the sake of their own well-being. As difficult as it is, Hallam and Kate accept the reality that not all relationships are meant to last forever.